Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if Carthage won the Punic Wars. I already made a video about Carthage a while back. However, the video is very old and I think as such I should remake this video again. Carthage, as we all know, had a very different system than Rome, and it would be very wrong to say that Carthage, who would be able to replace Rome, would do so in every way possible. While Rome was mostly land-based and codified their citizenship very clearly, Carthage was seafaring, disliked to engage in direct conflicts, and also relied heavily on mercenaries. For many years, this system proved to be good enough for Carthage to survive for a long time and even expand, but mainly because there was no great rival that could just take the other half or the rest of the Western Mediterranean. With the rise of Rome, this changed. Rome started to have interest in Sicily, and that's how both powers, of course, clashed. It seemed at first that Rome would be no match for Carthage whatsoever, but Rome was quickly trying to adapt to the new enemy. Not only did they do so successfully, but they also had different inventions. So, for instance, they tried to successfully use their triarmy, but also they used a new technology in it. The Romans constructed triarmies with a corvus, a boarding device which helped them to send their armies to the other ships, and as a result they could then also take out the Carthaginian crews. This meant that Carthage was not only facing a problem in terms of manpower, they needed to hire mercenaries left and right, but they were also now challenged on the sea. Carthage didn't improve their seafaring techniques, while Rome tried to use their disadvantage to an advantage by inventing the corvus. As a result, the First Punic War was won by Rome, and they started to expand beyond the Italian peninsula. They came into contact with Greek city-states of all around the Mediterranean and especially Macedon. Carthage, instead of coming up with improvements on their navy or in other ways, just tried to expand somewhere else because their main ideology was to make trade and avoid war as much as possible. And even that was done because one specific person, the father of Hannibal, did so, not because it was supported by all of Carthage. But as we all know, if one power is a warrior nation while the other isn't, the warrior nation won't just stop, and that's how we got the Second Punic War. Most people would say that Hannibal had chances to win the war against Rome. He came really close to winning it, but the problem is that actually, even so, he would not be able to win the war all by himself. First of all, he had internal enemies in the Carthaginian Senate. Second of all, Carthage never really addressed the manpower problem. And third of all, Hannibal was lacking important resources, which were blocked by the Senate again. So the war was dragging and draining. The Third Punic War is just seen as some type of cleaning up by most historians because Rome, well, they used a ridiculous casus belli. When the Second Punic War ended in 201 BC, the peace treaty prohibited Carthage from waging wars without Rome's permission in northern Africa. King Massinissa of Numidia exploited this and repeatedly attacked Carthage. When Carthage finally responded to this, Rome saw this as perfect opportunity to raise the city to the ground. But what if all of that changed? What if Carthage won the Punic Wars? A simple point of divergence one could take would be that Rome never invented the corvus, and as a result they would use the naval battles in a very different way. This would give Carthage the opportunity to block Rome and to collect a mass of soldiers, especially from Greece, who would then attack Italy proper from many parts of Italy. Carthage and its allies would not be in a position to beat Rome in the battlefield, but they would do enough to get Sicily and some southern parts of Italy back into the sphere of influence. A loss against Carthage would mean for Rome that there would be internal revolts from some sources, or also from others who wanted to renegotiate their treaties that they had with Rome. There was also then less supply, less trade, and probably also a period of isolationism, which means that Rome would not be able to expand, and even so they would not disappear yet from the political scene. I would argue that by winning the Punic Wars, Carthage would still try to get a foothold on Iberia, because the resources in there, they were just too tempting for them. And with more confidence and no official wars, as well as some money from Rome, the expeditions to Iberia would pay off, and we could see an impressive expansion of Carthage. And one person in particular would still become rich and famous because of this, Hamilcar Barca. Even after the defeat of Rome in an alternate timeline, I can imagine that the motivations for Hamilcar Barca, the father of Hannibal, would not change at all. And as power-hungry as Hamilcar was, he would have a very good basis to take the power of Carthage in his hands, or at least to prepare his son to become the ruler of this newly formed empire. Sure, in OGL, Hamilcar conquered Iberia after being defeated by Rome. However, the Carthaginian problems would still be the same, especially in terms of manpower. And remember, in this alternate timeline, Rome just failed to invent the corvus, and thus Carthage didn't really progress in any way whatsoever. The Carthaginian Senate could be bribed. Some senators would anyways be allies of the Barca family, and we could have a Carthaginian republic in name only, but it would turn into a military dictatorship at first, and then slowly become an empire. The first people to the Barca dynasty would try to keep happy would of course be the mercenaries that they already had. And I think that many other key people or cities would get some political rights, or even perhaps enjoy citizenship. Carthage would set the foundation to rely less on foreign soldiers. Another issue is that within this Carthaginian empire, only two cities were really important. And one of them was of course Carthage. So of course, if you want to become a very popular ruler and you want to solve this problem about the mercenaries, you have to address this issue about citizenship, and also giving many more rights to the cities all around you. Having someone like Hannibal in power would mean that Carthage would change a bit their perspective on wars. They were usually trying to use as less wars as possible, but Hannibal would wage more wars, and he would certainly want to pacify as much as possible in northern Africa, especially the Numidians, and even gain some foothold on southern France, which would eventually lead to a war with the Greek city-states, but Carthage would impose themselves except against Rome. It is possible that after some years Rome would recover, or would like to take advantage of Carthage being busy elsewhere. I could see Rome being able to take parts of southern France, and perhaps even until Iberia. But on sea they would still lose, and as a result Carthage would totally block southern France and other parts of Rome, which would drain their wealth and make them susceptible for other wars, which they might then lose against the Celts in the upcoming years. Carthage would sponsor some Celtic tribes, and with Hannibal as leader, some Roman sources could even consider joining Carthage out of financial need. Rome would now just be a brewing mess and shrink continuously. We are now in an alternate 200 BC. After hearing from a compact that was done between Antiochus III the Great and Philip IV of Macedon, Carthage would also intervene in Egypt, and the Ptolemaic Empire would be no more, while the Seleucid Empire would still succumb to their own problems. This leaves us with a very strong Carthaginian Empire, Macedon, and a few powers, especially in modern-day Turkey, where you have Cappadocia, Pontus, and then even Armenia. The Celts could form their own smaller kingdoms and raid parts of Carthage here and there, which would probably lead to further pacification, and without Caesar involved we won't see the rise of Vercingetorix. The current ruler of Carthage, well, of the Barca dynasty, would follow the idea of Hannibal, who pacified North Africa, but he would do so in modern-day France to protect their trade interests. We are now in an alternate 100 BC. The next logical step for this Carthaginian empire would be to set up colonies in Cornwall and western France after the integration of multiple Celtic tribes in the empire. It is possible that Carthage would copy certain technologies such as the Roman constructions of roads, as these would prove to be very useful not only for military purposes but especially for the economy, expansion, and of course to have further trade deals. Funnily enough, these streets would be first built in areas that were newly conquered by Carthage, because streets meant that you could easily control these new areas. Another point I want to mention as well is that Carthage would not necessarily annex parts left and right, but they would rather make very one-sided deals or treaties, as the Europeans did with the natives in America, for instance, or the Portuguese did with the Africans. As a result, deals in general would become very important in Carthage, and we may see the rise of Carthaginian law and something even akin to legalism, as we had in China, for instance. This Carthaginian legalism would be tied with a very rudimentary version of capitalism, globalism, and liberalism. Let's not forget that Carthage first relied on mercenaries, that Carthaginians were foreigners themselves in North Africa, that they were also in constant contact with outsiders due to the trade, and their aristocracy was a trading class as well. The Western Mediterranean would be transformed and become part of this Carthaginian hegemony. And also the culture that would rise with it would be a very different one than the one we had with the Romans. Clashes between Carthage and the Greek world would happen, and I'm very certain that Carthage would be able to take some islands, get certain trade posts in Asia Minor, and probably even try to get back Phoenicia as well if there was some motivation. Up until Parthia would expand their borders. And then we would get a very interesting scenario, because now we are in an alternate year zero, and without Rome, Parthia could probably manage to expand as aggressively as the Achaemenid Empire did. Carthage, well, they would switch their support between the Parthians and the Greeks, and depending on who offered them the best conditions. Parthia and the coalition of Macedon would fight each other, which would leave the Macedons very weak, and also all of Greek. Parthia would undoubtedly become the most important land empire in this alternate ancient world, while Carthage would expand their thalassocracy in this alternate 100 AD, and perhaps even stumble one day to other places of the world. And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.